Teachers of Reddit. What is the surprisingly smartest thing your stupidest student has ever said? Submitted by iamiconick. I'm teaching English as a foreign language and one of my students hasn't been attending for a year. When he finally came, I gave him an essay to write. He wrote it in perfect German because he thought that we were studying German. The guy had been learning German all year long only to learn that we were studying English. This is both the smartest and the stupidest thing I can imagine. When I was teaching grade 5 a few years back, I had a student who really struggled academically and misbehaved a lot. During one of his punishments, which was washing dishes with me from our morning breakfast time, I straight up asked him why he kept getting into trouble. The boy admitting that he just knew that if he misbehaved he would get to spend time with me one-to-one. And we would talk about life and his hobbies and such. I found out later on that his father had been incarcerated for pretty much the entirety of the boy's life. So, the stupidest and most misbehaved kid in the class was actually just playing the system the whole time, and really just needed a positive male role model in his life. After that, I told him he didn't need to act up in order to spend time with me. He could just ask for extra responsibility and I would give it to him. Monsieur, he was mostly better behaved after that. I miss him a lot. May or may not be dumb, but my friend and I went to her uncle's house, which had this piece of paper framed and put on the wall. It was a 0/20ths on a true or false quiz. Her uncle was a professor and was just too impressed by such an achievement that he had to put it in his home. In a college music history class, we were discussing the differences in sound between a harpsichord from the High Baroque and today's grand piano. One student, who normally contributed little, said, "The reason the two instruments sound so different is because harpsichord strings are plucked by quills, whereas piano strings are struck by hammers, and you'd make different sounds, too, if plucked or struck." Quote. Elementary school. I worked in the school admin office for a while. We had a cop come in to speak to the kids, basically to warn them on the dangers of strangers and random people speaking to them in the street. The cop was great and told the kids how they should always be careful and that some bad men might take them away from their mommies and daddies. One kid puts his hand up and asks the question, "So what will happen if we go with one of these stranger men?" Quote. The cop wasn't prepared for that question and just said how sad it would be and how his parents would miss him. Monsieur. A few days later, a new buzzword was going around the school which phonetically sounded like pedophile. The kid had looked up online or spoke to someone and then told the other kids in schools about what pedophiles do. It scared the hell out of some of the kids and the principal had to come to each class to calm the kids down. I teach first grade, so many not as dramatic as other replies. I had a kid who is kind of never quite paying attentions. We read a dinosaur book and were answering very basic first grade questions in the back of the book. It literally had a brachiosaurus and said, "The dinosaur's legs are A. long, B. short." He pretty much got stuck here and didn't move on. To me, it was the easiest question in the book, but some of the students are low-level English learners, so it is possible he just couldn't understand the words long or short. After like 7 minutes of doing my rounds and assisting other students, I came back to him. Monsieur, he had written in C. Long and short are both opinion words. I don't want to be dumb like my mama, teacher at an inner-city school for a time where almost all the students had free breakfast and lunch. Written about it before. Lots of the kids realized and knew they were in a no-win situation and a downward spiral in terms of education and situationing life. Quite a number of them tried their damnedest though to get out of it. Lots of times the kids don't know what is awaiting them at home. Many parents don't read to their kids or help them with homework. Many just can't because they themselves barely have an education. or they are in just bad situations. One student came in and said their mama chose to pay the cable TV bill over the hot water bill. And another week they mom shot themselves in the hand with a gun she borrowed from some guy. Later the same mom chose to pay her cell phone bill over electricity, and that student had enough and decided to start studying and try to climb out. There is hope. I've mentioned this before. And also it is genuinely difficult to tell who is the stupidest. Kids are smart some days and clueless others. Some grow out of it. Anyway, we were talking about cheetahs being the fastest land mammal. Some inner city kid swells up and says he can beat a cheetah in a race. The class laughs. Kid doesn't let it go. Finally he just says, I can beat a fat cheetah in a race. I'm just thinking. Maybe. Quote. I remember circumference because it sounds like circumcised. When learning mythology, Mr. If centaurs have 2 arms and 4 legs, does that make them insects? I hate the word in describing this kiddo. And it wasn't so much what she said, but did. She certainly wasn't stupid, but as an at-risk youth counselor I can say she was very low functioning. She went AWOL one night out of the blue. Not one staff saw her leave. Usually when this happens, kids go do dumb kid stuff like going to a park to drink and smoke. Teenage shit. Well, we didn't see her for 2 days. We finally got a phone call from a person who had taken her in 400 some miles away. When she got back to our facility, she had this nervous look, knowing I was gonna scold her. I didn't. I was fucking impressed. I asked her how she did it, and she said she kept hopping buses. I guess none of the drivers had the heart to kick her off. So there she went. I took a very big risk in the fact that I congratulated her on her journey. Her eyes lit up when I told her she had managed to travel farther than any kid that had ever gone AWOL. She never did it again and actually graduated the program with success. Still a booger, but I'll always remember that booger. 2 incidents come to mind. Kids, 10 and 11-year-olds, having a disagreement on their group assignment. I instinctively call out the naughty kid, whose whingy voice is ingrained in my brain and is the first voice I notice. He jumps up and screams that his group are egotistical assholes who can't even decide on a topic 2 days into their assignment. Was impressed by his vocabulary, but more so that the small amount that had been done on the assignment already was completely his. Still had to send him to the principal. I was on prac in a class of 7 to 8-year-olds. A pair of girls gave me a drawing and said I was really pretty. Another girl who seemed to be from a lower class family compared to her classmates and had learning delays heard this and came up to me saying, I don't think you are pretty. I was taken aback, but kids are kids and don't always have filters. She saw the look on my face and followed up quickly saying, I think you are kind and smart. Being pretty doesn't matter. Girls can be more than pretty. Are you going to stay as our teacher forever? Single quote. And that was the moment I knew this profession was for me. 5th grader gets negative for a volume answer. Me. Negative volume? Think about that for a minute. 5th grader. Couldn't that be for a black hole? Why can we eat some plants and not others? Quote. Yeah, nature, you bastard. I don't know if this counts, but I was teaching a public speaking class. It was mostly 9th grade. They were all nervous about their first big speech, and I tried to ease their nerves by saying, I promise giving a speech won't kill you. Then some kid shouted, do you know how many people in history have died while giving a speech? Quote. Edit. So apparently this confused some people. X and Y are specific to where I live and work. I don't want y'all to just look that up, Popeye, and say hello. Computer science. X equals a notable local event that involves walking to every bar between 2 popular points that day of the year. Y equals one bar in particular which has 2 or 3 companies inside of it. A mall of bartenders, if you will. To another student, dude, arrays aren't that complicated. It's like X, except every bar is Y, with infinite bars inside. You can't know if their food sucks this year until you're already inside looking at it. You don't have to eat it, but you have to look at it. A student in my economics class started his final essay with this. We are all familiar with the country, Africa, yet at the same time we know little about the atmosphere. All we know is that it is hot there. African Americans live there, and they are really poor. This begs the question, why is Africa that poor? Quote, it was just so jam-packed with stupid I had to stop grading for 24 hours. Edit. For the record, this was indeed a college student. Most of the replies in here are not of smart things that stupid people have said. It's just stupid things that stupid people have said. The amount of teachers incapable of reading the title post make me realize why we are in this sad state we're in. I was making a joke about mermaids to a 6-year-old. If a mermaid is a person on top and a fish on the bottom, is a person on bottom, fish on top, and mermaid too, or is it something else? Quote. Kid pauses and says, well, no, it's not a mermaid. Because if you have a fraction like 1/2, it's not the same as 2/1. I thought that was both the cleverest answer to that question I ever heard, but also made no sense. Mermaids aren't math. I ask that question to a lot of kids. That's by far my favorite answer. As a guy teaching freshman English, I had a couple instances of cheating that left me speechless. First, my university uses an online plagiarism checker, and the students know this. With one student, over half of his essay was copied from a website. He looked genuinely shocked when I called him out on it, and then told me that his mother wrote the paper for him. As I explained that his mother writing his paper was also cheating. Then he asked if he could get credit for the half that wasn't from a website. Another time, the students had to analyze a movie showing how it used the hero's journey as plot structure. This was an easy assignment, seeing as how nearly every modern movie uses this structure. The student copied the Wikipedia summary of Aladdin word for word, and he denied doing it. He argued it was a coincidence that his entire essay was the exact same as Wikipedia's.